أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. سل إماما عاش في العلم دهورا ودهور، يطلب العلم ببذل حتى ضمته البحور. سل إماما عاش في العلم دهورا ودهور، يطلب العلم ببذل حتى ضمته البحور. صابرا في العلم صبرا حتى سموه الصبور، يخرج العلم بفأل مثل ريحان الزهور. صابرا في العلم صبرا حتى سموه الصبور، يخرج العلم بفأل مثل ريحان الزهور. واطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. كن إذا سموك اسما لتكن مثل الحضور، كن رفيقا كن عظيما كن كما تلك الصقور. كن إذا سموك اسما لتكن مثل الحضور، كن رفيقا كن عظيما كن كما تلك الصقور. راقيا بالعلم نحو النجم مزدان شكور، رافضا كل التدني رافضا نفس الغرور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. ابن مسعود فقيه علم أحيا القفور، فإذا أعطاك رأيا كان سهما في النحور. ابن مسعود فقيه علم أحيا القفور، فإذا أعطاك رأيا كان سهما في النحور. وعلي ثم بالدين معاذ لا يبور، اقرأوا التاريخ تروي عنه أفواه سطور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. إن سألت عن إمام أو فقيه في الأمور، ابن عباس ترنم وسيبقى في الصدور. إن سألت عن إمام أو فقيه في الأمور، ابن عباس ترنم وسيبقى في الصدور. فهو كالشمعة تذهب حتى تأتينا بنور، ساهر بالليل علم وبأوقات سحور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. إذ بكى النبي يوما سمعا صوتا جهور، يا أبي كم روت عنك الليالي والعصور. إذ بكى النبي يوما سمعا صوتا جهور، يا أبي كم روت عنك الليالي.
الحمد لله رب العالمين، الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Dear brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh, and welcome back to Islamic Oasis. It has been a while since we due to Ramadan and all of the responsibilities in Ramadan that the whole team in Islamic Oasis have had. We had to reschedule many of these discussions till after the month of Ramadan. Brothers and sisters, today the lecture or the discussion actually will be on a very important event that took place last month, actually right in the middle of Ramadan, which was the replacement of Imran Khan literally by the Americans to Bilawal Bhutto Zardari. And the whole political situation in Pakistan has taken a very interesting twist as far as how agents of the West, both from the perspective of ulama, from the perspective of politicians, the role of the IMF, and everything else has been so exposed, so clearly exposed. Not that it wasn't exposed before, but I think even for the general masses who may not have understood or may have the politics of Pakistan and how volatile the whole situation is, and how continuously Pakistan remains under either colonial powers and crisis, never allowed to somehow become stable or provide for its people. So inshallah, to discuss this, we have both Brother Mazhar Khan and Brother Mohammad Atif, who for him it's the first time on this show. We are going to bring them on and discuss this situation of Pakistan in detail. What has happened, what is going on now, and what is the future, or what should be the future for Pakistan. So brothers, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So I will start with so another replacement in Pakistan. Sheikh, brothers, yani, who has replaced him? The ISI, Army, or United States? I mean, it's a what's going on, and what is the reality?
I think, Atif, you can take that.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Brother, first of all, thank you. I'd like to say salam to you and to everybody else who's watching today. Thank you for inviting me here today. In response to your question, really, Imran Khan has fallen out of favor with the Pakistani establishment, which is predominantly dominated by the military. And the military in turn is actually very dependent on the Americans. So you can draw your conclusion from there. Imran Khan fell out with the military. The military basically withdrew their support for Imran Khan and his PTI government, and that allowed the other political opposition to then, be able to pick off the parliamentarians who supported Imran Khan's government, and to enable a no confidence motion. They tabled that, and they successfully passed that in the National Assembly, which is the parliament. So it was effectively an in-house change, and the new Prime Minister is Shehbaz Sharif. So he's the brother of Nawaz Shareef, the leader of the PML Noon. So he is now the Prime Minister of Pakistan, and he seems to have the blessing of the establishment behind him.
So, Brother Mazhar or Azhar Khan, Sheikh, how is so now? So has this been ever this clear for the people of Pakistan? What actually happens in politics of Pakistan, or is this just another drama being played out?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa salatu wa salam. For most people that follow Pakistani politics, they're not going to be surprised. I recall reading a book 20 years ago. It was written by a UK journalist by the name of Catherine Lamb. And very interestingly, the title of the book was called Waiting for Allah. And it was about Pakistan. And there was a passage in the book. She was a personal friend of Benazir Bhutto. And interestingly, when Benazir got shot in Karachi, she was in the car with her. So I think she's more than just a journalist, because she has a very deep insight of Pakistan. But interestingly, in the book, she recalls an incident at a party, some diplomatic party, where there was a rumor going that America was going to get rid of Benazir Bhutto as the Prime Minister. And she's saying, no, this is not true, these are just rumors. But she's hearing it from so many people that she actually goes to the ambassador, the American ambassador, to ask him, is it true that I am going to be removed? And he said, no, there's no truth to these rumors. You are not going to get removed. These are just rumors. Sheikh Shiraz, that very same afternoon, she was deposed.
Wow.
So Catherine Lamb narrated this incident. Now this is like 20 plus years ago. So anybody who follows Pakistan politics knows very government, the Prime Minister, the leader of Pakistan, he's only there as long as as Atif quite rightly said, the establishment in Pakistan and the Americans are in agreement on who that should be. If there's no agreement on that, then the Prime Minister will be moved or replaced. So this is nothing new, and this has been ongoing for many times. And you see they come and go shamelessly. So Benazir came, she got kicked out, she came again. Nawaz came, got kicked out, came again, got kicked out again, and he's trying to get back in again. Musharraf came in, got kicked out, and tried to come back in. And there was a footage some years ago, he was covertly pleading with the Americans to back him so he can come back in. So these are just like puppets coming and going.
No, I remember watching that video. It was on YouTube also, that he was literally sitting there and asking that, I mean, I did everything you guys asked me to do. So this is, okay, so now here also with Imran Khan, I mean, it seems like he did everything that the US wants him to do. And then, so what is the issue, Sheikh? Yani, because, I was hearing things or reading things that there was also a clash between the army and the ISI. Is that a true thing? I mean, is that something that really was happening, that ISI was thinking, or at least in the background, supposedly ISI was supporting Imran Khan, or even trying to create some type of a positive image of Imran Khan within the country, but the decision was already made? Is that, or also on the appointment of who will be the head of the chief of ISI?
You see, in Pakistan, the dynastic families rule, and that's always been the case. That's the way the country is structured. So Imran Khan had no way of coming into power. He had no grassroots support. He had no, massive support like these landowners and these established families have that come into politics. So it's clear that the military backed him, supported him, and cleared the way for him to take power. So yes, for sure, the military backed him and got him into power. But once he got into power, I don't think he played the game like the military wanted him to play. He upset some of the military people, and he also, to be quite honest, I think he made a mess on a lot of fronts, when it came to the economy, and the prices rising, the taxation rising. A lot of people lost hope. So it's quite interesting, just before he was kicked out, there was a lot of resentment towards Imran Khan, for the way he had caused a lot of problems for a lot of people in Pakistan. But now that this has happened, suddenly everybody's forgotten that, and now they're saying, oh, some injustice has been done to Imran Khan. But just before this happened, not only were the military not happy with him, but a large segment of the Pakistani population had enough as well with the way he was governing the country. And also the established powers, the establishment in Pakistan, he'd also, stepped on their toes. So he became very unpopular with a lot of people. So, which led to his downfall.
Sheikh, I mean, now being tired of Imran Khan, the population was tired, especially because of the economic situation in Pakistan. But the reality of that is also the role of IMF within the country. So that is also the US, meaning that how does this play out? Who can, I mean, with the way the politics are played in Pakistan, or for any of these countries belonging to these agents. So, I mean, is this a grip that you cannot get out of? I mean, economically, you are under the grip of IMF, which is the US. Politically, you are under the grip of the generals in the army, and those generals they're under the umbrella of the US. And then the population is fooled left, right, and center. So what needs to be done here? I mean, that's why I was asking. I mean, people know. I mean, you were talking about 20 years ago what happened to Bhutto, for instance, Benazir, and now with Imran Khan. But do we learn? I mean, are we learning from this? As a Pakistani population, learning anything from this?
Can I just say this, that Imran Khan, as Sheikh Mazhar just explained, that the military has strongly supported Imran's ascent in Pakistani politics. I mean, just a couple of elections ago, he only had one seat, and that was his own in the National Assembly. So traditionally, the feudals and the big industrial politicians, the big business families, they've traditionally had a vote bank where, what we call Baradri in Urdu. So these people will vote en masse for a particular candidate in their constituency. So the military, and in particular the ISI, who was currently being led recently by General Faiz Hamid, he was very strongly supporting Imran. Now, last November, that ISI head was replaced by the Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa. Now, Imran actually objected to that replacement, to the new guy, General Nadeem, who was appointed by General Bajwa. So there was a standoff between Imran and General Bajwa, and that subsequently has led to this process of him, falling out with General Bajwa. However, as Sheikh Mazhar Brother Mazhar also pointed out, that the economy has also been failing in the number of years that Imran Khan has been Prime Minister. So when the IMF told him to raise the prices of gas, electricity, and taxes, Imran duly complied. So he was actually very unpopular before all of this happened, as Brother Mazhar pointed out. So the thing is that unfortunately, the bulk of the people are only seeing what's happening now. You see, they're comparing Imran with these with the old politicians. They're comparing him with Shehbaz Sharif, Bilawal Bhutto, Maulana Fazl Rahman. I mean, people absolutely dislike these people, and these people have no credibility with the majority of the Pakistani people. So compared to them, most people see Imran as somebody who's a good guy. Maybe he didn't succeed. People will come out with reasons such as that, the country's been around for 74 years, it's a huge mess. How do you expect him to clean that up in just 3 or 4 years? So people unfortunately have a short memory in Pakistan, and to a certain extent, Imran Khan's reputation is now being whitewashed by this. Since he has been removed, Imran has now gone on to this foreign conspiracy narrative that my government was removed at the behest of the US, and that's playing very well with the Pakistani public. Together with the fact that you've now got these corrupt looters who are now back in power. So those two twin political arguments are actually giving Imran a new lease in terms of his political life here. So unfortunately, there is a certain, I would say, a certain substantial portion of the Pakistani public which is buying into that. But then again, there would be people who would understand that Imran didn't really succeed at anything when he was Prime Minister. He failed at the economy. He failed to eradicate corruption. He failed to bring back the billions which he promised that he would, that had, that were stashed overseas. He didn't really achieve anything. If anything, he just made things worse. So, we have to talk about his political record, his record in office when he was in power, and I think it's important that we explain and make that point to the wider public.
So okay, so what are they? What are those points? I mean, if you're going to meaning as far as what he promised, the Medina state and all of this.
Medina.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Riyasat Medina issue. Yeah. Riyasat Medina. So what happens to Riyasat Medina now? I mean, this is. I guess I'm talking about the sloganeering. What does it take to have a role in politics in Pakistan for either individuals or parties right now? What do they have to agree to? Yani, what are we talking about here for? What is the agreement of the political families or the elite of Pakistan that they have to agree upon in order to make any movements happen in Pakistan?
Well, it's very simple. You don't cross paths with the military, and the military in turn, has an understanding with the Americans. The Americans have some core interests in Pakistan. First of all, it's Afghanistan, in the context of Afghanistan.
I mean, can you go a little bit more detail? Meaning, before we go to Pakistan, the army itself, why that type of relationship? Why that type of authority upon the ruling, the army and America?
Well, the army has traditionally been very powerful in Pakistan. I mean, it's over 600,000 men. It gets the bulk of the budget, which isn't paid in loans and interest to debtors like the IMF. So it's very powerful in that respect. And you can't ignore the military. I mean, let's not forget it hung a previous Prime Minister, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, the father of Benazir Bhutto. General Zia al-Haq executed him. There have been a number of coups in Pakistan. 32 years of Pakistan's existence has been under military rule. So the military is a powerful institution. However, the Achilles heel for the military as they see things, and this is the limitation of their vision that they have for Pakistan, is the economy. The economy has always been weak in Pakistan due to mismanagement, due to corruption, and due to the availability of easy loans from institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. I mean, the IMF and the World Bank are effectively like loan sharks for Pakistan. They lend money, they promise money, and in return, then they extract large payments out of Pakistan in the form of interest and repayments. And the only way that these rulers, I mean, this is the Faustian bargain that they have made effectively with the IMF and the Americans, is that you keep on giving us loans, we'll carry on ruling, and in turn we'll carry on raising taxes and extracting that wealth from Pakistan and return that back to you. That's actually the vicious cycle, which is actually the misfortune of the Pakistani people. If you look at the debt levels in Pakistan, they have been increasing by huge amounts, almost by 50% in just under Imran Khan's government in the last 4 years. It's astonishing when you look at the figures. Foreign debt at the moment is about at least $136 billion. And the question that you have to ask here is that every time when Pakistan's rulers, even the current Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, his finance minister was in Washington last week negotiating a new aid package with the IMF. Why is it that whenever this aid is given to Pakistan, there is no qualitative difference to the quality of life of the average Pakistani? There is none. If anything, things are becoming worse for them. So clearly the loans don't help the people of Pakistan. Yet the people of Pakistan are having to pay back these loans in the form of higher taxes every time they fill up at the petrol pump, every time they pay their electricity bill, every time they pay their gas bill. Even when they go to the shops just to buy food, they have to pay sales tax, general sales tax. All of these taxes are applied on them, and they, a good portion of those go in the form of interest payments. So, Pakistan's rulers like to talk about Azadi, independence from the British since 1947, but the truth is that Pakistanis are economic slaves in their own country, and they're beholden to the Americans because the army, the military, and the rest of the politicians, for them, this system works for them. This system works for them, but it has failed everybody else in Pakistan. It works for the 1%, the 0.5% in Pakistan. It works for the politicians. It works for the judges. It works for the generals, but it has failed everybody else and has impoverished them.
Sheikh, anyone here can jump in. The political elite there, or let's say the media, forget the political elite, we understand that basically means those who are going to be the Yasser people. But let's say the media who are, is the media in Pakistan independent? Is there anything that, do they not see this? I guess what I'm asking is that, it's so clear, the writing on the wall is so darn clear that what is actually happening in the country, but you don't see in Pakistan, maybe I'm wrong or I'm not observant enough, the kind of, let's say, the Arab Spring that took place in that area. Are we going to see it? Are we on a brink of a revolution? Are we the change in Afghanistan? Is what are, and the political scene within India itself, which is creating chaos within India, within the Muslim Hindu relationships, Bangladesh situation, Sri Lanka situation. What are we going to see? Are we going to see a subcontinent spring? Where are we going?
Sheikh, in answer to your question, the media in Pakistan is not free. They like to proclaim that, but really the media in Pakistan is just another tool for the ruling elite. And proof of that is very simple, because we could not have this discussion on Pakistani TV that we're having right now. Simple as that. So these anchors, these big journalists, they craft a very carefully made narrative where, it's very carefully controlled, and a truly genuine independent discussion on the system itself. You can, the media in Pakistan is very happy to discuss the ruler of the day. You can replace him, change the face. But they would never actually discuss the system in detail itself. They will never actually discuss secular democracy. the fact that these parliamentarians are free to legislate in parliament, they're free to decide the halal and the haram, you will never have that discussion. So that proves that the media in Pakistan is not free.
So, brother Mazhar, where are we going? Are we going to see Arab Spring in this area? I mean, not Arab Spring, but I mean, it's likely of what we are saying here.
You know, like Atif mentioned, that the media is not free. You might get some independent voices here and there, but by and large, just like any other country, the media is controlled by the establishment. So, you know, recently when there's been some massive funerals in Pakistan where people have stood up against the government and died, or when there was this issue about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam being dishonored, this was completely blanked in the media. You know,
last
and
Ramadan,
Nawaz Shareef,
Ramadan before.
Yeah, and Imran Khan Imran Khan even refused to send the French ambassador back home, and there were literally hundreds of thousands of people on the street, but the media blanked it. Now, we shouldn't be surprised, because what's happening in Pakistan is no different to what's happening in any other so-called democratic country across the world. The media is regulated, and the system, like Atif mentioned, benefits like 1% or a small veneer of that society, and they maintain that system. So now, for example, look at the West. The dynamic is the same. So in the West, these Western countries like Britain, America, they've spent a lot of money on the people because of COVID, right? But who's going to pay that back? They're going to raise the taxes, they're going to remove benefits, they're going to remove services in order to pay for that. So any expenditure that the government spends, it's the people that have to pay it back. The problem in Pakistan is when the IMF loan come in, when debt relief comes in, when aid is given to the country, that money doesn't reach the man in the street. That gets filtered away by the politicians. So it's even worse in Pakistan, that there's no even tangible change to the lives of the people. The money that comes in gets filtered away, but then obviously the lender wants the money back, so the people are paying it back. So the money comes in, the looters loot it, and the common man in the street pays higher taxes to pay that back. And this is a similar model across the world. So this system, we see it acutely in Pakistan, but the failure is the same across the world. And this is the failure of the democratic system, because structurally and systemically, they share the same dynamic.
Sheikh, so if I could just add here, you talked about, could there be an Arab Spring in Pakistan? Now, the use of the democratic system is actually quite clever in Pakistan. You know, if you compare it with a country like, for example, Saudi Arabia and Egypt, you know, it's almost like a very iron grip Gestapo type rule in those countries. In Pakistan, the rulers they've actually developed a level of sophistication in the last 20, 30 years where they actually allow some protests. You know, politicians, the establishment very, you know, carefully allowed people to vent a certain degree of anger, to talk well about certain politicians, condemn other politicians. So it's like a vent. What I'm trying to say, it's like a vent to a certain degree. You got a country like Saudi Arabia, 25 million people, you can use the mukhabarat to control them very effectively. In a country like Pakistan, where you have more than nearly 220 million people, you can't use those tactics in the same way. So they've had to develop this level of sophistication to a degree. As Brother Mazhar mentioned, democracy is the same world over. I would argue that in countries like America and Britain, they're very sophisticated in the way they deal with the people. But in Pakistan, you're seeing a cruder form, but it's still more advanced to countries like Saudi Arabia and Egypt. And that has, to a degree, acts like a political vent for that. But however, having said that, I would argue that there's a limit to how much the people can tolerate. If you cannot afford to put food on the table, as many Pakistanis are now increasingly finding, you know, it was estimated before all of this, before COVID, up to a third of Pakistanis could not afford to have 3 meals a day. Now, that figure has undoubtedly grown bigger. How much longer can the people tolerate this? How much longer can this go on? And I think, you know, as the economy becomes even worse around the world, and Pakistan's not immune from that as well. Imports are denominated in dollars, and you know, is having to make back-breaking debt payments. I think you will see a political effect. This is primarily one of the drivers why Imran Khan has been removed from power, because the political establishment, the military establishment, they recognize, they understand the core reason that was generating the unpopularity of Imran. And by changing the face, changing the ruler, they're attempting to rejuvenate and give a new lease of life to the political system of Pakistan.
Okay, now to a bit of the regional situation in the area. So, you know, they said every time there is a change in Afghanistan, there's usually a change in Pakistan. How true is that, and what does that mean? If that's true, I mean, every time I've seen there's a change in Afghanistan, there's always some type of change that takes place within months in Pakistan. Is that just my analysis, or is there reasons for why that happens in the region?
Well, I would say that, you know, if you look back when Musharraf threw his coup in 1999, so shortly after that, the Americans went in to Afghanistan 2001. So they put, effectively what I'm trying to say is that they put a military man in charge in Pakistan. Remember, Nawaz Shareef, a politician, was in charge. That government was thrown out by the military, and then Musharraf took the saddle. And effectively, that provided solid support for the Americans for the next 10 years for their military operations in Afghanistan. So you could say that it was reversed. The change took place in Pakistan first, and then what happened in Afghanistan happened. But America has certain core interests when you look at the region. Afghanistan is one of them, Central Asia. America is very keen to control that. Another key interest for the American is the military itself in Pakistan, a powerful military with nuclear weapons. The Americans want to make sure that the military, you know, stays on the right side as far as it's concerned. The Americans are also concerned about the Pakistani-Indian relationship, and this is in the context of containing China. So if Pakistan dials down the heat, the Indians are more able to confront the Chinese on the line of actual control, which is the border with China, which runs several thousand kilometers. And then, of course, the Americans, above all, don't want to see political Islam anywhere in the politics of Pakistan, in the body politic of Pakistan. That's another red line for the Americans. So you have these key interests, and remember, Pakistan's located at the foot of the Gulf, next to Iran, next to India, bordering China, bordering Central Asia. So if the Americans are looking to dominate the world, you know, Pakistan is an important country that you can't just allow to go its own way. So these are the key red lines. These are the key interests which the Americans have. If those interests are secured and they're secured by the military in Pakistan, then the Americans, you know, who rules after that in terms of the politicians, I don't think they're really too bothered by that, as long as from an ideological perspective, it's a democratic government, because as I mentioned, they don't want to see political Islam. They don't want to see a genuine Islamic state in Pakistan. So those are the red lines for the Americans, and the military in Pakistan help to deliver those key interests for the Americans. Okay.
You mentioned Iran. I mean, I'm putting out the questions. Anyone can answer that, Brother Mazhar or Brother Atif. The issue of Iran, you know, yesterday or day before yesterday, I think, maybe it could have been 2-3 days ago, Americans mentioned something that America does not have a problem with either Iran or Russia making a nuclear deal. I don't know if you heard that. That was something that was kind of openly stated, that there may be a deal that is happening between the Russians and the Iranians on the issue of nuclear. Does that mean the region now, that power base is moving to Iran, and that they're worried that Pakistan may not be as sustainable, or may not be as you know, so volatile, that they're trying to look to make sure that there is a strong base within that region?
You know, the thing about the Muslim world is, whether it's Iran, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, all of these countries, when it comes to their geopolitical relationships, when it comes to their foreign policy, they're always in line, and they will never step outside of what America expects them to do.
No, I'm saying that not from the elite or from the I'm saying within the masses, that things have become so shaken within Pakistan that there's a possibility of some type of you know, a crisis in Pakistan. So are they, by allowing this thing to happen to Iran, are they trying to create a regional power within the Arab and Muslim countries to that maybe Pakistan is not sustainable enough to keep?
I'm not sure what you're asking, but
Okay.
Pakistan lurches from crisis to crisis all the time. Yeah?
Right.
So it goes from a crisis to another crisis. It never goes from a crisis to a good position and then it falls. It's always a crisis to a crisis. The masses can recognize that there is a problem, but the people need guidance and leadership to show them what the solution is. And this is a voice that they're trying to drown out or strangle, because any charlatan along and use rhetoric which appeals to the people, like the Riyasat-e-Madina, like Nizam-e-Mustafa, because Islamic sentiment is very deep amongst the people in Pakistan. So when you appeal to Islam, the people respond. That's why it's important for a leadership in Pakistan, people who can guide the people and give them a vision, to show them that what the real solution is. And if that message can get across to the masses in Pakistan, then yes, for sure, a change can happen in that country, because the sentiment is there. And it's greater in a place like that than many other places in the Muslim world.
What can the Muslims of India, I guess I'm moving a little bit more further now, but
Can I just interject
please.
On the Iranian question? I think we should bear in mind the situation of the Ukrainian war. That they're trying to embargo Russia in terms of its oil. So I think that really explains the keenness of the Americans to strike a deal with the Iranians, because I think they're looking to bring back Iranian oil on the market and help stabilize prices as well. So I think we should keep that in context. As far as the Iranians and the Pakistanis are concerned, I think the Americans have used both countries, along with Saudi Arabia. The Iranians were a key factor in the subjugation of Iraq. Let's not forget that. And even in Afghanistan. So these rulers in Iran or Pakistan, they are continuously cooperating with the Americans. So the Americans will try to hedge their bets. They can certainly do that. But I wouldn't say that even the Iranian situation, can be guaranteed in the future. Economic sanctions and inflation is also affecting the Iranian population as well. But I think the key interest that the Americans have right now is to try to bring more Iranian oil back into the market. They need that a nuclear agreement, and for that they need the Russians to agree as well, to buy in on that as well. So I think that's what explains that activity here.
I mean, I guess this is with this whole situation, embargo, all of this, Russia, Ukraine. I mean, where is the whole region going? I mean, so the whole region is I mean, is it chaotic, or is this something that is by design this way? Or is it moving out of the hand of the US? Or did it fall back in the hands of the US?
Well, look, I think the Americans...
Go ahead, anyone, go ahead, Brother Mazhar.
No,
okay,
I was just going to say...
Anyone.
It's inevitable. Just a brief point. It's inevitable that capitalism is going to do this because it's failing globally, right? So if you look across the world, all the currencies are on a steady decline, and that's always going to happen. If you look at the amassing of the wealth, so when we had COVID just now, right? When millions of people around the world suffered, many hundreds of thousands of people died. Economies were closed down. The world as a whole suffered collectively. But at the same time, the elite capitalists, your billionaires, never had it so good.
Yeah.
They made more money, right?
Than ever before.
And that was a very clear illustration that this system is fundamentally designed in a particular way to protect particular interests. And it would always protect and guard those interests against even the good of the majority. And I think during COVID, this was clear for people to see. But this trajectory is unsustainable. Because if the rich get richer and richer and the poor get poorer and poorer, it's going to come to a point in time that is going to be unsustainable and something has to give. So they have to play these games to try and keep the system going. But it's inevitable it's going to collapse. And that's why we as Muslims, the actual inheritors of the earth, the caretakers of this planet, because we are absent from the political scene, that this charade is taking place. And that's why it's important for the Muslim Ummah to reassert itself and to reassert its political entity in order to bring a balance to the earth. And this chaos is happening because we are absent.
Brother Atif, you were mentioning something.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, I think Brother Mazhar has made an important point about COVID and the, how the capitalist system has been exposed for its failing. And we see, even when we look at the situation right now, we're seeing a huge inflationary effect right around the world, here in the UK, Pakistan, even in America as well. Now, they'll talk about how, for example, COVID lockdowns, supply chain issues ranging from China. They'll cite all of those. They'll cite, the economy coming back to life with the lockdowns being removed in the West, how a surge in demand for energy is driving inflation. But what they won't actually talk about, and this is actually the dishonesty of Western politicians, they won't talk about the quantitative easing that they used during COVID. So they literally printed hundreds of billions worth of dollars and euros and pounds, which they used to sustain their spending. The benefit payments, the furlough payments, to keep a cap on any social unrest in their economies, in their countries. But when you are printing that level of fiat currency, and when you look at the M2, M3 money supply, money has increased by almost 15 to 20%, the supply of money in Western economies on average. Then of course that's going to lead to an inflationary effect. But this is, as I mentioned, this is the dishonesty from Western rulers. They won't talk about that. They won't tell that to their people, that look, we did this, and because of what we've done, you're now paying the price in terms of higher inflation. So effectively they're stealing. They're actually taxing the common man by resorting to quantitative easing. And as like Brother Mazhar said, because Islam is absent from the political scene on the world stage today, nobody here is thinking about or talking about how Islam would present its economic solutions. Things like the gold and silver standard. How would its approach be, what approach would Islam take to dealing with COVID? Would it impose these harsh lockdowns? How would it deal with the situation? There's no discussion of that because we don't have a genuine Islamic state that would actually project the Islamic solutions for the world. And the world is crying out for this. It's not just the region in Southeast Asia with Iran and Pakistan. The whole world is in turmoil. I mean, you look at Europe, the war which is taking place and the effect that it's having. The world is really in a state of crisis, and it's only getting worse, like Brother Mazhar said.
Question. I mean, that's a whole discussion by itself on the economics and economics of Islamic State. Inshallah, we'll have that discussion too. But because there's so many questions regarding this whole situation taking place, on the day of Eid, whatever day, I think they did on a Tuesday or whatever, right? That's another invention by itself. But we'll, we're good in innovating these things, except what we need to invent in. But they were actually the armies between India and Pakistan exchanged. There was exchange of actual gifts on the border. I don't know if you saw that. There mithai was being given on both sides and things like this. So are the Muslims of India are going to, what happens now, Akhi, in this, staying in the same context with brothers in this region, are Muslims of India are going to be left to rot? Are we looking at the Rohingya situation there also? Is this what is coming for the Muslims of India in this context?
From the way I see it, it's very bleak, because Pakistan, what are they going to do for the Muslims in India when they themselves had done nothing for the Muslims of Kashmir, or when they themselves have done nothing when their own people have been attacked? So, a short while ago when an Indian jet was shot down in Pakistan, forget the mithais on the border, this guy came to kill and harm Muslims in Pakistan. Yeah. He was given a cup of tea and sent back.
Yeah.
So if India attacks Pakistan and they don't do anything, if India has unilaterally annexed Kashmir and removed the special status that it has, and Pakistan does nothing, why would it do anything for the Muslims in the interior of India? So yes, Muslims in India are facing a very bleak future, and they look towards the east and see what happened to the Rohingyas. They look further east and they see what happened to the Uyghur Muslims, and they are extremely fearful. They are so fearful that the Muslims, some of them, some of the leaders have shown so much cowardice that they are even talking up the BJP and trying to make friends with the BJP. And this is an act of people who have they're hopeless. They see no hope. So, and this is because of the way Pakistan is behaving. If Pakistan was firm and strong and India feared Pakistan, it would take care in the way it dealt with the Muslim population in India. But it knows it's got nothing to fear in the regime in Pakistan. And again, as Atif mentioned earlier on, this is all to do with the dynamics America has put in place, because they want to reduce the tensions between India and Pakistan in order to counter the threat China poses to America's hegemony around the world. So again, it all comes back.
Let me ask you, let's say if I was China here, can China capitalize on the crisis and in the crisis that's taking place in India? I mean, let's say Pakistan doesn't come to aid, but can China play a role, say, well, we know what US is doing with India, why India is kind of almost left to do whatever it wishes. I mean, it's clear that no matter what happens, I don't think anybody's coming to the aid of the Muslims in India, or at the same time, they're going to be allowed to do whatever they wish because they need India to kind of face off with China. But can China play, and politically, can it create crisis within India using the Muslim situation in India? Is that a possibility, or is that
possibility?
I think
but whether it would actually go and do it, I doubt that very much. Atif.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we need to look at it from the lens of Chinese interests in the region. So yes, China and India had a clash last year. You can recall on the line
border,
of actual control when the Chinese troops actually, taught a good lesson to the Indians, and that actually, illustrates, something about the Indians in terms of their military prowess. That they're actually very good at just terrorizing a civilian population, the Muslims in India. But the Chinese, I think, will calculate according to their interests. Yes, we know that in India there's more than 30 different insurgencies. So, the Chinese, they can obviously tinker with that. But I don't think, like Mazhar said, I don't think the Chinese are going to intervene. They have no love for Muslims. We know what they're doing to the Muslims in Xinjiang, the Uyghur Muslims there. And I would also add that, really, this is what is actually happening to the Muslims in India is simply because Pakistan has turned its back on the Muslims in India. Quite simply put, that. And the Hindu BJP leadership is obviously going to take heart from the fact that what's happened to the Rohingya Muslims. It's seen the world reaction. There was nothing, nothing was said, nothing happened to them. And I would also just cite the example that the Indians actually fired a missile, their BrahMos cruise missile, into Pakistan. Apparently, it did not have any warhead on there, but they fired a blank missile into Pakistani territory in the month of March, and Pakistan remained absolutely silent. The army chief, General Bajwa, he was absolutely dumb and mute, said nothing for days on end. Now, you tell me that any country which otherwise, imagine if it had been the other way around. Imagine if Pakistan had fired a blank cruise missile into Indian territory. Do you think the Indians would remain quiet? Yet that's exactly what the Pakistani leadership did. And they just simply said, we demanded investigation. That's a very weak, very cowardly response. Of course, the Indian leadership is going to become belligerent. It's going to become belligerent to the Muslims in Kashmir, to the Muslims inside India. And in time, it will become belligerent towards Pakistan as well. And that's exactly what the Americans want. They want Pakistan to be subordinate to India, so that India can use its feeble strength in trying to contain China. Let's not forget that the Americans have the Quad, which is the Australians, the Japanese, Australia, and of course India as well, and themselves in trying to contain China. So. The Americans are not as strong as they like to project themselves, and they need every help they can get. India isn't as strong as it likes to project itself. So, and the key, what they're using to project that strength is try to restrain Pakistan, and they're using economic coercion through the IMF in order to achieve that.
Two more issues. Just sticking with the Indian situation here, and anybody can take this question. Can the Muslims of India have played a very interesting role since the fall of the Khilafah. Whether it was Muhammad Ali Jauhar and his brother, and whether it was the Silk movement and all of these things. What should be the role of the Muslims of India in this situation? While let's say the Muslims of Pakistan, we understand that they are the leadership here and they need to lead. But on the other hand, the Muslims of India, what should the role be, brothers? And is it that they need to? I mean, what can they do? I mean, there's Pakistan. There was no Pakistan. So the population was huge. There was a lot more influence, let's say. But today, there are still 230 or 300 million Muslims in India. What should be the role? Obviously, the ulama are not playing their role. They're actually dumbing down the people, and they're making them even more cowards. Cowardice is coming in. But people are, they themselves, like what happened in Jahangirpura, for instance, in Delhi, people were responding, and then their homes were bulldozed, and masajid were bulldozed. So what do you advise to the Muslims of India?
I think that's the wrong type of question to ask. What can the people of the Muslims of India can do for themselves, right? Because to be honest, their situation is becoming more and more like the Muslims in Kashmir and more like the people of Palestine. They are powerless. They might be like 200 million Muslims there, but they have no political power. They have no military might. They are at the mercy of the mobs and the racist government that's in power there. They really need a strong Muslim power outside to come to their aid. And until and unless that doesn't become a reality, there's very little they can do. They could resist. They could do what the Muslims in Palestine do, try and resist. But how far is that going to get them? At the end of the day, somebody needs to come from outside to come and liberate them and to come and protect them. And that is the real question, is not what the Muslims in India can do, but what is it that the Muslim nations surrounding India can do? What can Bangladesh do? What can Pakistan do? So really, what the Muslims in India should be doing is calling out to these nations that what are you going to do for us? So they could appeal to Imran Khan and say, you call about Riyasat Medina, you claim to be the representative of Muslims, what are you going to do? And this is going to wake up, hopefully, the Muslims that Imran Khan threw the Uyghurs under the bus. Because at the end of the day, it's national interest which counts for him. So Muslims are going to see that, look, we need an Islamic ruler, we need an Islamic regime. And at the end of the day, we can talk and talk and talk, but all roads lead to the re-establishment of Islamic Khilafah, to bring about an Islamic unity in order to solve our problems. And all roads lead to this. And until and unless we don't grapple with this fundamental issue, we're going to be talking about India, we're going to be talking about some other country, we've talked about the Rohingyas, we've talked about the Uyghurs, and on top of the Kashmirs, on top of the Palestinians, on top of the Bosnians. And this is going to be ongoing until and unless we stop the rot.
Yes, so final thoughts, I guess. I mean, you kind of already gave your thoughts that, look, it's the issue of, but I guess what the questions that are coming up is regarding, the awareness of the masses. I mean, I guess this is one of the ways that we can do that, is to create awareness amongst the masses that there is no other way. We cannot, we need to be independent, and independent means actually establishing the Khilafah, because any other way, it's not working. They've tried everything else. But do you see hope with these changes, or are you? I mean, I guess final thoughts. But what do you see from the region? What do you guys? I don't know if you guys are from Pakistan or not, India or Pakistan. Being in Pakistan, maybe visited Pakistan, maybe seeing and being in and out of Pakistan. What do you guys see? Is there hope, or are we looking in long term? I mean, and the reason I'm asking that is because if you talk to some other people, politicians, things like this, or even brothers who want change, they'll say that, look, the Americans, after the Ukrainian war, they have actually strengthened their grip in the region by making Europe weak, by making Russia weak, by creating an almost let's say, for instance, America was actually falling apart, but then with this Ukraine situation, it strengthened itself in the region. Or are you seeing otherwise?
You know, we are suffering in the same way Banu Israel suffered at the time of Musa alayhi salam, through cowardice, through weakness, through an inferiority complex. You know, we try and make out that we are so weak and there's nothing we can do. And you're talking about America becoming stronger. America was never stronger than after the fall of the Soviet Union. After 9/11, America was never stronger than ever in its history. And it couldn't even achieve its objectives in Afghanistan. After 20 years, it had to leave. After spending trillions of dollars, they had to leave. And what we forget, and this is very important.
But did it achieve it? But did it achieve it now?
No, it still hasn't achieved its political aims in that area. It's still trying. It's not achieved what it wants. But the point is this: what we need to understand is America is able to swing its weight because of the subservience of the Muslim powers. It needs Pakistan, it needs Afghanistan more than Afghanistan and Pakistan needs America. So if Pakistan, even in its weak state, did not help America to enter into Afghanistan, there is no way America could have put any boots on the ground in Afghanistan.
True.
So not only America is a cowardly state when it comes to fighting. It won't enter into an arena until it's got support and backing from multiple fronts. So if we were to become truly independent, people think, oh, we're going to get boycotted, oh, we're going to suffer. No, they're going to suffer as well. They need us. How is America going to stabilize the region without Pakistan? It can't. How is it going to fulfill its plan of using India to counter China without Pakistan? It can't. How is it going to stabilize Afghanistan or the access to the Central Asian republics without Pakistan? It can't. So we also hold cards in our hands. And it's high time we stop being cowards and stop thinking that all the cards are in America's hand. And if we can't learn that simple people in Afghanistan were able to stop the Soviet Union's American because they had a willpower. And that is something which is an attribute of this ummah, that we have sabr, we have patience, and we have resilience that they don't have. We can wait longer than they can wait. And Allah says, have sabr and outdo the others in sabr. And we can do that. Absolutely. And we can do that. And therefore, we should not fear the kuffar, because Allah is on our side and we too have cards in our hand that we can play to our advantage.
Jazakallah khair. Brother Atif, how important is it that, this look, and of course this is wa'ad Allah, alladhina amanu minkum wa amilu salihat. This is, it's coming, whether it's coming in our time or, Allah decides for it. But as far as sustainable work, meaning how sustainable is Pakistan when it comes to if the Khilafah does appear in Pakistan? How sustainable is it? Can it sustain itself? Or what should be done to make sure that it can sustain itself?
Well, let me just say this, Sheikh, that, the American, if you look at the American situation today, America is very badly politically divided. We just have to look at the recent, opinion from the US Supreme Court, the draft opinion, Roe versus Wade on abortion. I mean, that is really going to split. I mean, that's just another representation of the split which is occurring in America, the Trump effect, the Republican Party. Really, you're seeing a very divided America. So America may have made some gains with this Ukrainian situation, but really politically it's divided. And like Mazhar mentioned, America was at the height of its power at 9/11, but yet within the space of 20 years, it squandered a substantial portion of its power. Now, I'm not saying that America is down and out, but what I am saying is that America is not as powerful as it likes to project itself. America relies on these vassal states around the world. It relies on the Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, Iran, and of course it relies on Pakistan to project power in Afghanistan. So America has a number of weaknesses which you can see. Its economy is spluttering, it's resorting to quantitative easing, we're seeing the inflationary effect, and the capitalist system is generally in trouble around the world. So this global order is actually failing to deliver right around the world. Now, with regards to your question in terms of establishing Khilafah in Pakistan, absolutely. Pakistan has all the ingredients needed to make a success out of a Khilafah state in Pakistan. It has a strong military armed with nuclear weapons. It has a very strong agricultural base, one of the top 10 producers in the world of wheat, milk, meat, and other fruits and vegetables. It can sustain its population. It has a strategic location. It has a youthful population, a population of more than 200 million people, with more than half under the age of 35. When you look at the demographics in Western countries, these countries are facing a slow-moving car crash as far as the demographics are concerned. Their tax base is shrinking as the population becomes older. The population in Pakistan is youthful, it's talented. We see many Pakistanis travel abroad, many professionals, many doctors, engineers, lawyers, and accountants travel to America, to Canada, to the UK, where they take their skills, their skill sets. So the country has all the ingredients. What it doesn't have is a sincere leadership which can harness all of those resources. And if the Khilafah was established in Pakistan, Pakistan would then, the Khilafah would look to unify with Afghanistan and in turn with the Central Asian states. Russia is weakened with the war in Ukraine, so that makes it ever so more likely that that can take place. And then in time, the Muslims around the world in the Gulf would recognize that they have to unify with the Khilafah state. So definitely, the Khilafah is very much a very realistic reality, and we should never give up in the hope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As things as bad as they may seem, we can easily turn the corner, we can easily turn the page. We need a sincere leadership which can implement Islam via the Khilafah state, and Pakistan is the perfect vehicle for that.
And with that, inshallah, brothers and sisters, first of all, jazakumullah khairan for both brothers. This was an amazing discussion, and this will not be the last one. We will keep inviting you guys back, bi'idhnillah ta'ala, as the region, it's to see what is going to happen in this region. It's a very volatile, very, it's a region that I think the whole world is looking at, with 4 or 5 nuclear powers in the region, the most populous, young population, growing GDP, all kinds of things that are happening in this area. This area does, of course, and anyone that takes leadership in the area would be I think in many ways leadership right away. It will gain leadership within the world the moment it actually takes leadership. Yes, with the ayah, wasbiru wasabiru warabitu wattaqullah, we have to, like Brother Mazhar was saying, we have to outdo them in their patience. We have to do ribat, we have to do the kind of things that we need to do, and fear Allah mostly. That ittaqillah wa lan yaj'allahu makhraja. Allah Azza wa Jalla said, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah will come to your aid in ways that you couldn't even imagine. So yes, we need to do the work, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah Azza wa Jal uses us and as a resource in order to revive this ummah bi'idhnillah ta'ala and bring back the serious change that it is needed. So jazakumullahu khairan, brothers. I know we took a lot of time, but these are the kind of discussions that are needed to purify thoughts of the people and to bring them to change, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
يا شبابا قد أنابا وإلى الله استجابا إن من يرجو الثواب لا يبالي بالصعاب في سبيل الله نمضي نبتغي رفع اللواء فليعد للدين مجد وليعد للدين عز